Welcome to the Self-taught Illustrator Podcast. My name is Natasha Polizenko and I am here to prove that you do not need a formal training or background in art to make it as an illustrator. So listen up and get ready to be inspired, encouraged, and uplifted in your illustration journey. Let's do this. Hello everyone, I'm excited to be back for another episode, especially since I got such an overwhelmingly positive response after I dropped the last one. Thank you so much for all the kind words and feedback. I appreciate it so much. You cannot even imagine. And for those of you who like this podcast and want more frequent and potentially even longer episodes, I have one request for you. Please take a moment to give this podcast a 5-star rating wherever you are listening. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave a review. This is the only way that this podcast will have a chance of reaching more ears. So thank you. I would be beyond grateful. So let's dive in. Today, I want to talk about motivation and how we can find and maintain it through our illustration practices. Motivation is such a universal topic, and we've all been in the situation where we can't seem to muster enough of it in order to achieve what it is we want to do and create for ourselves. So no matter at what point or stage you are in your illustration practice or career, this episode will help you think through strategies and techniques to help you. Now, it's important to mention that, of course, we are all different. What might serve to motivate me might not help you, and vice versa. We're all different, and so we might need different approaches. This is why in this episode, I've come up with a large range of different strategies. So please listen to all of them and feel free to pick and choose which of these you think will apply to you and your own individual personality, circumstance, and working style. Now, it is all worth mentioning that the reasons why a person may be lacking in motivation are varied. There are some circumstances that are well and truly out of our control and might be super debilitating to our motivation. Things like illness, family issues, financial troubles, or even burnout. These are all life circumstances that can be all-encompassing. And when these come up, I think it's super important to give ourselves grace and not beat ourselves up about not staying productive and consistent in our illustration practices. So apart from those more serious reasons that people may be struggling with motivation, I also want to talk about some other reasons that may crop up at different stages of our practices. Firstly, I see time and time again that a lot of people are the most excited and motivated at the very start of their illustration journeys. So I talked about this a lot in my last episode, but essentially when a lot of creatives are just getting started in illustration, they are buzzing with ideas and goals. However, after this initial spike, I often see this motivation wane or even crash. Reality sets in, and some people may find that they aren't improving as quickly as they would like, they aren't able to stay consistent, or they might be starting to get bored. On the other end of the spectrum, when we have people that are further on in their illustration practices and careers, this is where some creatives may hit a plateau. This is when it seems that they aren't growing or progressing creatively or professionally anymore. Boredom strikes and things start to feel monotonous and repetitive. So no matter where you are in your illustration practice, my hope is that this episode will help equip you with the strategies to help you find motivation and stay motivated. Okay, the very first strategy to stay motivated may seem like the most obvious thing in the world, and that is goal setting. Now, we all know what it means to set a goal. We've probably done it a million times. You may have even heard people talk about setting SMART goals. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. These are the criteria of a good goal, and the idea is that it will make it easier to stick to and achieve. Now, the reasons why I believe setting goals is so important is that it allows you to have a big vision for what you would like to achieve. And once you have that, you can break it down into more discrete parts. So like what you will need to achieve in a year, a quarter, a month, a week, all the way down to the actions that you need to take every day to make sure you're on track to hitting that big goal, whatever it may be. And this is so important to our motivation because sometimes the day-to-day can seem boring or it may seem meaningless. Like you might think to yourself why creating a TikTok, for example, is important and how that's going to help you get to where you want to be. But if you have the strategy and long-term goal in mind, then all of a sudden you may feel more fired up and motivated to do these smaller day-to-day tasks. And it's also worth mentioning that if done right, setting goals can actually be a really powerful form of manifestation. If you're new to this or find yourself rolling your eyes, please stick with me for a second. This might be the one thing that you're missing to really supercharge your motivation. So I want you to take a moment to think about your big goals and really feel free to think big here. We want to think of something that fires us up, something that just makes us so happy to even imagine and think about. Now, let's play make-believe for a second. Close your eyes and imagine that you have achieved this big goal. And not that you will achieve it, but that you have already achieved whatever it is that you have dreamed of now. Really take this moment to experience and sit with your emotions. How does it feel to be this version of yourself? Now, ask yourself how this version of you shows up in the world every day. What are their daily habits? How do they think? How do they feel? How do they act? The aim is to try and embody and live out the life of this version of yourself as closely as possible. So let's say, for example, the ultimate version of yourself posts your illustration work and creates content for 200,000 of your adoring followers on Instagram. Now, if in reality we only have 200 followers, we still want to be posting with that same energy and mindset as the version of you with 20,000 followers. Does that make any sense? We want to try and fully embody and become that ideal version of ourselves as closely as possible right now, and not wait for it to come to us at a later date. It may be very hard for you to convince yourself of certain things at first, especially if you are a realist. But at the very least, when you wake up in the morning, think about your big goal and take a few minutes to imagine a reality where you have already achieved these things. And wherever possible, try and go about your day as though you actually have. Okay, so enough about goal setting for now. The next strategy I want to talk about is aligning yourself and your work with a mission or purpose. While a goal is something that you set for yourself and is very unique to you as an individual, a mission or purpose is more often than not something that is external to you and your work. Now, this may take a range of different forms, but just to provide you with some examples, this might look like centering your work around a social justice cause or initiative. You might choose to use your illustration to bring attention or to advocate for certain groups or causes that you feel passionate about, that need support. And the reason why this strategy may work for some is that it makes the reason and purpose for creating greater than you. For some, the idea of creating in service of others might help motivate and encourage them to create even when they might not necessarily feel like it on any given day. Additionally, depending on how you choose to showcase your work, you might be getting a lot of positive affirmation and feedback from the groups or organizations that you're supporting, which in and of itself can be super motivating and encouraging. Again, I have to mention that all the strategies I'm laying out for you in this episode won't work for everyone. I'm just trying to present a range of different options that might speak to and appeal to different personalities. So please don't feel like I'm trying to tell you that you should be doing every single one of these, because that's definitely not the case. Now, that leads me to my next strategy, which is somewhat related, and this is finding and aligning yourself with a certain community. Now, your community might be inside or outside of the illustration world. So for example, let's say you're a food illustrator. You may find a local community or group of friends that likes to go out, visit, and review different restaurants. Or if you're a botanical illustrator, you might sign up for a florist class, for example. Or if we want to do something more illustration related, we may sign up for a drawing or painting class, or actively reach out to other illustrators through social media. The goal here is to create a support network, so people that you can share your illustration work with and chat about your interests in order to keep motivation running high. Art and illustration can at times feel like a very isolating activity, so creating community and networks of friends can be extremely beneficial. This may also be a way for you to potentially find mentors. I recommend looking for people that most closely reflect the kind of practice and career that you want for yourself, and either making them your official or non-official mentors. So an official mentor would be someone that you actually correspond with, someone that you ask to be your mentor. And in some cases, you might be paying them for their mentorship services. An unofficial mentor is someone that you might not even necessarily have ever communicated with in person. And this might sound funny, but for this person, you might just imagine they are your mentor. So when you have a question or a problem, think about what this person would do. What advice would they give me? Obviously, this is not going to be as effective and as impactful as having an official mentor, but it makes for an interesting thought experiment. A lot of times when we're trying to think through a problem, we already deep down know the answer. It just helps us to objectify our question a little and help us look at it from an outside perspective. Okay, now the next strategy is accountability. So we can get accountability from basically all the sources that I already mentioned. Setting goals, aligning yourself with a purpose, finding communities and mentors can all be great ways to create an environment of accountability. But I also want to talk about social media and how we can use this to keep ourselves accountable. Now, we all know that social media can be great in some ways and not so great in others. I personally believe that in order to be a commercially successful artist or illustrator, you need to have some sort of social media presence. But I also know and recognize that social media can be the very same thing that gets in the way of being productive and successful. It can be addictive, it can lead to mindless scrolling, and it can be a huge source of insecurity as we see other super amazing, talented artists seemingly doing so well in their practices and careers. So with that being said, tread lightly when it comes to social media. But if it works for you, use it as a way to keep accountable in your practice. So this is something that I did for myself when I was at the beginning of my own illustration career. I decided that I was going to post one illustration and one tutorial every single week on my Instagram. And whether it was true or not, I believed that people were waiting for and anticipating my weekly posts. So that helped me, myself, stay accountable. Another strategy is to use stories to poll people about what you should draw next, for example. So providing two options and then following through with the winner. Of course, no one will be forcing you to do these things, but publicly saying that you are going to do something will help you feel more accountable and motivated to follow through. Okay, so another strategy to keep motivation high is to track your own progress. This can be done in a portfolio, a sketchbook, or even social media. Documenting your work and reflecting upon it after some time can really help give you some perspective and insight into how much you've improved, which can be motivating in and of itself. Seeing how your illustrations looked 1 or 2 years ago compared with how they looked now, that is, if you've been creating consistently, is probably going to be a big confidence boost. And imagining how good your art will be this time next year, if you keep at it, can be another way to help keep that momentum and motivation going. So whatever you do, keep track of all your work. If you delete something, be sure to archive it so you can look back at it down the road. Now, the next strategy I want to talk about is competition. And I believe that for some, competition with others can be a good way to stay motivated. And I am not dismissing that. But I do believe that this idea of competition should be focused inwards, focusing on and competing with yourself. So what I basically mean by this is striving each day to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. This approach to competition is going to be a lot healthier for your self-esteem and is going to stop you falling into the comparison trap. Competing with and comparing yourself with someone else that maybe has 10 years of experience on you is ultimately going to lead to burnout. Whilst being 1% better today than you were yesterday is going to be so much more achievable and realistic. And as you start getting better and better, you will find that momentum addictive, which is the best motivation. Now, the next two strategies that I'm about to introduce to you are basically in direct opposition to one another. So once again, remember that these are strategies for different people and different personalities. So consider which, if any, works best for you, for your practice at any given time. So the first strategy is discipline. This is the tough love approach to motivation. And this is recognizing that although creating art and illustrations is supposed to be fun, there are instances where you might not feel like you're going to want to do certain things. Sometimes it's not going to be super fun. And in these instances, you have to be disciplined enough to push through. Keeping promises to yourself and sticking to your non-negotiables is what's going to ultimately help you over the line. So they say it takes 2 months to develop a new habit, and it can be super hard to motivate yourself to sit down and draw for a few minutes each day, even if it's just for 2 months. Pushing through and gritting your teeth through any resistance and discomfort that comes up may be a good strategy to employ, especially as you're trying to form a new habit. So to be honest, this is actually something that I do myself. I don't always feel like creating tutorials or creating YouTube videos or writing and recording these podcast episodes. But I know how good it feels once I'm done and when people show appreciation. So I personally need to bring out that discipline every now and then, especially when I just rather veg out and do nothing. Now, the other side of that coin is to go with the flow. When you're feeling that resistance and can't be motivated to do something that you need to do, find a way to make it more enjoyable and therapeutic. So this is something that I actually also do, especially when I'm super tired and low energy at the end of the day, and I just can't muster an ounce of motivation to tackle my to-do list. I will turn on the TV, I will light a candle, grab my iPad, and just start sketching. The act of doing something so low resistance that is technically still productive helps me feel way better about myself as opposed to if I were just to scroll aimlessly on TikTok for 2 hours. Even if sketching feels like too much, taking a bath, going for a walk, and using that time to plan and think about your illustration career or practice is a way that you can honor your rhythms and energy and will ultimately help prevent burnout. It will help you recharge and will enable you to wake up fresh, motivated, and recharged the next day. The main takeaway is that remember that you are human and make sure that you're not neglecting aspects of your life that are crucial to basic physical and mental health. So things like getting sunlight, exercise, social interaction, these are all things that make for a well-balanced, healthy life and will ultimately help keep you energized and motivated in your creative pursuits. The final strategy that I want to talk about today is pivoting. Now, pivots can be small, tiny actions that help things feel new and fresh, or they can be massive changes you make to your practice or even your life. So let's start with the small pivots. Firstly, think about ways that you can step outside of your regular routine or way of doing things. A really good way of doing this is to participate in drawing prompts. Still Here, Still Life is an Instagram account that posts weekly still life prompts. And there are always a bunch of illustrators posting draw this in your style challenges. So finding ways to get involved in something new and collaborating with new people can be an awesome way to break out of the monotony. Also, changing your actual physical routine and setting may also help mix things up. Working from a new cafe, a library, or park can help freshen things up. Humans weren't designed to sit hunched over their computers for hours on end. Now, another small pivot may be to test out a different subject matter and medium. If you feel yourself getting bored with your work, take a moment to consider possible areas for exploration and experimentation. If you've always wanted to learn oil paints, for example, think about exploring that. Sometimes changing our medium or even combining mediums can make for super creative and interesting outcomes. Now, when we're thinking about taking bigger pivots, these may take a little bit more consideration and soul searching. If you have got to the point of your illustration practice where you just don't feel like you are excited about it anymore and nothing can seem to motivate you, it might be time to explore other interests. Remember, nothing is wasted. All the work that you've put into your illustration practice isn't for nothing. And maybe your illustration style or sensibilities can be funneled and transformed into, let's say, killer pottery skills or writing, teaching, woodwork. The sky's the limit. Don't feel like you are stuck in illustration for the rest of your life because you've invested so much time, money, energy, or whatever into it. As I mentioned, nothing is wasted. Creativity is just one big interconnected web, and it might be time for you to weave yourself something new. All right, so that leads us to the conclusion of this episode. I hope that there was at least one or maybe even a few strategies in here that you might be able to use moving forward in your illustration practice. Motivation is a funny thing, and at different times we might need different things. Now, if you like this episode, I'm going to shamelessly beg you to rate and if you can, review the podcast. I want to shout out listener Glen DeGuzman at _sun_dragon_tattoo_. He says, I found this podcast this week and I'm loving it. Great, useful info and very inspiring/motivating. Thank you so much, Glenn. This is beyond appreciated. If you want to check out Glenn's work, he creates amazingly beautiful and intricate tattoo art. It is truly stunning, and he's based in Las Vegas if anyone is in the area and in the market for a tattoo. I will link his Instagram in the show notes. Now, if you would like a listener shout out in an upcoming episode, rate, review, and be sure to include your IG handle or website. So that's it for now. Thank you for listening to the Self-taught Illustrator Podcast, where we prove that you do not need a formal training or background in art to make it and thrive as an illustrator. I hope this episode was helpful to you. You can find me at Natashko, that's Nataszko, on TikTok or Instagram, and I'll also link my YouTube channel in the notes. I look forward to bringing you more illustration tips, tricks, and nuggets of wisdom. All right, until next time, bye for now.